1, 2, 3.
That's kind of the poster for the movie.
I'm like, I'm mad because I'm overboard.
I'm mad because I'm out my tools.
No, my tools. No, my other tools. No, my other tools.
I feel like...
Why would you throw me overboard just because I was advancing on you and cussing you out of Blue Streak?
Because we need a title. I feel like the entirety of this series, Midnight Screenings, has led to this moment.
This is our Infinity Wars. For 18 years, long we have waited and argued about a movie that I've never seen.
Have we argued about this movie, or have I just been like, oh, you need to see this?
It's not so much arguing as me being like, I'm pretty sure this movie's terrible because of this, and this. And you're like, yep, I still love it though.
Yeah, Overboard. So we finally saw, or well, I've seen it many times. It's been a number of
Finally,
years.
once again, saw Overboard.
I finally once again saw Overboard for the first time. No, it's been a number of years since I'd seen this movie, but I remembered so much of it, so it wasn't like I was sitting there like our lead character and it was all coming back to me.
So while I was reacting to the particularly heinous parts, did you feel that perhaps, like, were you like, huh, that is pretty terrible, or was it you already knew in your heart that I was gonna not...
Oh, I knew you weren't gonna like
part?
this movie. It wasn't like I was sitting there like, whoa, man, I'm shocked. She's really not liking this. Was it what you thought it was gonna be?
It was more than I thought it was going to be. Like, more so...
Yeah.
The things I thought it was gonna be.
More so dated?
More so... kind of hateful under the guise of absurdity.
Was there anything you liked about it?
Yeah, like we were saying during the movie, there are some genuinely funny parts, usually revolving around like the side characters, like Roddy McDowell, and that guy Taggarty,
Michael Haggerty.
Yeah,
I think.
or just random side guys that kept cutting to.
Yeah.
Be like, oh yeah, it's Pee Wee Herman, you know, and then he'd do like a Pee Wee Herman line in French. I was like, okay, that's funny and not even remotely misogynistic.
Yeah, like I would, there would still be a line that would be thrown out in the film that would still kind of get me in the flick as I was watching this movie, because it's been a long time since I've seen it, but my family really loved this movie a lot, and I liked it when I was a kid. It's one of those films that like, I don't know. I guess your enjoyment of it will depend on who you're watching it with, for one. Look, I still found a lot to enjoy about this movie, but I understand the problems that it has. Of course, how could you not?
Yeah,
in
like
watching
I was
this
saying
movie.
too, like Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn are like at the top of their game in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
If it would have been anybody else, I would have found it deeply unwatchable. As it was like, ha ha ha, oh no, ha ha, hey, fuck you!
Yeah, and that was kind of the reaction back then a little bit. When this movie came out, it got kind of mixed reviews, and it was a modest enough success. But no one really thought that hard about this film, because, I mean, back then, 87 when this movie came out, even into the 90s when, like, you know, my aunt would put this on, or my grandma, or my mom, or I think my dad liked this movie. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But the reviews for it, no one was really being that analytical about a movie like this back then. It was something that came out that it was advertised like it was kind of a throwback to like a screwball romance of like the 40s.
Yeah, well, it's got a shtick from like that era. Of that very specific, like, unbearable woman meets a man who's mean to her because, and just spanks her until she's a better person and falls in love with him.
I love how wildly different the first sentence of the description was depending on what I was looking at today. So we watched this on Amazon, right? Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, and in the first line on there was like a loud, obnoxious woman or something like that.
Some bitch.
No, that was the other one. The other one I was looking at earlier going, a rich bitch falls off a boat.
Sorry, quote, rich bitch, because that is a line from the movie.
I can see why then, and for certain, I can see why this movie works in the same way that I see that, like, a Hallmark Christmas movie is still popular. Mm-hmm. Because the same audience that I would watch a movie like this with would also watch a movie like Holiday in Handcuffs or Dear Santa or a lot of those like bizarre Hallmark Christmas movies that when you really break down the plot, which happens a lot now with a movie like this. I mean, we're genuinely more analytical towards a film like this now than in 1987. But the movies, even back then when this movie came out, the positive reviews that it got were because of the cast. And even in watching it right now, Kurt Russell and especially Goldie Hawn own these two roles like they do. They, for as absurd as this movie is, and wow, is it ever? They are really good in this, especially Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
Like, they are completely selling these two roles in this weird romance.
And where, you know, aside from my many problems with this movie, which I'm sure we'll get into, like, the parts where they let me down in terms of, like, character development weren't because of their acting, it was just because they were written to suddenly change their minds, or they were written to not learn their lesson even one iota.
Yeah.
I think that the surprise for me, because I wasn't surprised, I knew it was about, you know, this guy that basically kidnaps this woman and forces her to, like, work for him to pay off a debt she doesn't know that she has. What I didn't expect was how mean he was going to be. And I think it is that callback to the 40s where it's like, you know, a woman in a place of power has someone be, like, just mean and cruel and outright derogatory to her face, and she finds it refreshing and charming. I didn't expect there to be so much of that in this movie, because that's, like, a lot of their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, while I was watching this movie again, I was putting myself in the mindset of Leslie Dixon writing this movie. And in that aspect, I was like, I see where they're trying to go here, because it's not supposed to be a heavy film. It's just supposed to be just a date movie. Like, it's not supposed to be about any kind of heavy topic in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And I'm like, watching it, I'm like, I see what arcs they're trying to make with these characters here, as thin as they are, but it is such a heavy storyline that I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more when we see the remake, I think that you could do a movie like this in 2018, aside from...
You made it a horror movie?
No, even, well, certainly that.
Passengers. Passengers?
Yeah, oh, you're right. Yeah, like, the difference between a movie like this and Passengers is Passengers was started out trying to be deep from its original script. This movie was never trying, even in probably its earliest incarnation, was never trying to be anything deep or say even anything really remotely provocative or anything like that. A movie like Passengers started out that way, but was kind of cheapened as it went along.
Fluffed to the moon.
Yeah, oh my god. This movie was always supposed to be fluff. Just rom-com 80s date movie fluff, but where was I even? Oh, no, I could see, I haven't seen the remake yet, but I imagine it's just gonna be this, except gender swapped.
But I feel like in the remakes, like, the Anna Faris character is at least gonna have to, at some point, acknowledge the monstrous thing she's done to this other living person.
Yeah.
And Kurt Russell just straight up doesn't. Like,
yeah.
He's sad because it was over. He wasn't sad because of the thing he'd done, or, you know, sad because he learned his lesson even, like, a little bit. The only lesson he learned is he's not capable... The only lesson he learned is he's actually not a good father. Which, true, but not the main lesson that he should have learned there. And the lesson that she learned wasn't that, like... I don't even... Like, that the men in her life are all garbage?
Oh my god, I love it!
The lesson she learned was that in the decision between this man owning me and this man owning me, I picked this one because his kids are adorable.
They kind of were.
They were
I love
pretty cute.
I love the part where she thinks one of them's name is Roy.
So she just keeps calling him Roy.
Yeah, like, it's not us, Dad, it's Roy. Like, there would be lines that would be thrown out in this that were genuinely, even today, making me laugh. And they were lines that I even remembered. A couple things I love. I love it when Edward Herrmann at the end of this movie goes full on insane and thinks he's God and tries driving the boat away at the end of the film. I think you still could do a movie like yeah, it'd be easy to do this as a thriller, like, but I think you still could do it as a dark comedy or something that's at least tackling issues that this movie hints upon but never really addresses it. One of which being his dead wife.
Yeah, she's just dead. Like, she's been dead for 3 years, and the kids are having behavior issues, and it's easy to draw a line between the two events.
Yeah.
But his solution is just buy a couple fire extinguishers because they're going through an arson phase.
That was a funny line. Like,
Well,
look,
those
they're
fire
going through an
extinguishers
arson
come back.
phase right now.
What is
like,
that gun rule where you can't mention a gun without it going off? And so
Oh.
they mentioned the fire extinguisher, so of course they had to use it on her because she had a burn
It's
on
like
her
if
hand.
there's a scene that involves a swimming pool and a waiter.
The
No.
waiter's going in the drink.
No, like towards the end of the movie, when they end up back together at the end, and he's still, which I mean, of course that happens. Like that
I had so many hopes for the end of this movie.
they weren't going to end up together in
No,
this.
I hoped, first of all, that it would end at that one point where she goes back to belong to her other husband, and she's just staring dead-eyed out into the sea. If that had been the end of the movie, it would have been hilarious. If there's like, so there's this like little story he tells her when he's taking her out for her birthday, about like how boats, when they're coming into the port of this particular town that they live in, always honk 3 times because of it's like a love story where this guy was in love with like a rich girl, and like her father sent him away, but he was coming back, and he's like, I'll honk 3 times on the boat horn so you'll know it's me. And then she's like, but then her father wouldn't let her go.
Yeah.
So they both jump out and swim out to try and find each other, but it's foggy,
Yeah.
they die. And so like to this day you can still see them fucking on the rocks.
Yeah.
So at the end of the movie, he like honks the horn 3 times like, I love you, and she's like, I'm gonna come to you, and they both jump into the water. And my dearest wish was that they would both drown and die.
Again, if it was a darker comedy, I could see this working as a dark comedy. I could. And because the movie, the moments like that, when he's telling her that story, and even like, I can see where this movie's trying to be sweet. Like, and the actors are really, like, Goldie Hawn especially, is pulling that off. Like, I mean, plotline of the movie aside, when it's moments where the two actors are supposed to have chemistry with each other, and they're supposed to, like, him telling her that story, or her with the kids, or things like that. I mean, it is true that if you put 2 lesser actors in this movie, all you're going to be thinking about is what's wrong with the film. But with these two actors, with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell in there, and there are those moments in there that are those kind of, I don't know if tug at the heartstrings is the right word, but when they're supposed to have genuine romantic chemistry, or really human moments like where she notices the kids have poison oak and things like that, they do sell those moments. And it is in those moments where I'm like, yeah, okay, I could still watch this movie like with my grandma and not think anything of it, really. I mean, to a point, sure, but like, I could, this again, this kind of goes to what I'm saying, where seems like it's the kind of movie that's made for someone who's going to pull up a Hallmark Christmas movie or something like that.
Because, like, for me, the appeal, and I've watched those, like, Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yeah.
I feel like those sweet moments, like
Yeah.
the tug at your heartstring moments, are because they're kind of getting to know each other as people.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, like, it's Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, and they're both very attractive people and very, like, dynamic,
And they have chemistry.
and, like, I don't want to call them sexual dynamos, but, like, they're both kind of, like, pheromoning at each other.
Uh-huh.
And, like, yeah, you can see that, but, like, the words coming out of their mouths aren't, like, 2 people getting to know each other. It's Kurt Russell telling a sexy story and then being like,
But they're such good actors, and I mean, God, those two are still together to this day. I was noticing that when I was watching the movie again, where I was like, some of this dialogue really doesn't work, but my God, these are two talented actors. Like, Goldie Hawn at the beginning of the movie is like hardly even, her character is hardly even a person, really.
Yeah.
It's just like this.
She's just like a cardboard cutout, like, bitch, 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 bitch,
Yeah.
bitch, bitch. Here's my butt. Bitch, 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 bitch,
But
bitch.
God, she was owning that. Like, she was owning it so much when she was doing that. Like that was, I was watching that going, this is a really these are very two-dimensional scenes with her just being this, not even a person. But my God, she's doing such a good job of it.
And like, maybe it was just, speaking from a place of personal bias, but like the fact that I knew the movie would then proceeded to not treat her like a real person for the entirety made those scenes just kind of gross to me, because it was like it didn't feel parodic. It felt like it was making us okay with how she was about to be treated.
Can you see why it worked in 1987?
I could see how it would not be. I don't know how to say it. Like, I could see how it would pass in 1987.
Because it's kind of like I said earlier, like,
'Cause we didn't really think about stuff like that.
a movie like this wouldn't.
And it
we
was
didn't
because
really get
shit
that
like this was normalizing it, which is in itself gross, but I don't want to get up on like a soapbox. It's just that was what I was expecting not to like about this movie, and that's what I didn't like about this movie.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like also like some of the movies of the 40s too, where audiences going to see this movie then, myself included, just really weren't that analytical about a movie like this. You're just kind of, you're in and out, and you're watching these two actors together just sort of play off of each other. And the one part where, like we were saying earlier, when I was watching it again right now, I was looking for the stuff that worked in 87 and still kind of works now, but certainly watching it in 2018 is a different experience. But the one part where I was like, okay, like something really should have been, a much better written movie would have gotten way more into the psychological issues he's having with losing his wife, because even at the end of the film, when they're on that lifeboat together and they're swimming towards each other, there's the big shot where they've gotten back together and he's still calling her by his wife's name.
Calling her Annie.
And that,
was Annie his dead wife's name?
I assumed. If I'm wrong about that, let me know, but I always kind of assumed that about the movie, that was his wife's name. So when he was still doing that, I was like, okay, movie, in doing that, a majority of this movie, again, is not trying to be that deep, but when you're doing a thing like that, where he's still doing that, I'm like, all right, you are hinting at some psychological issues with this guy here, and I can't help but think about it now, because the movie is inching towards that, but since it's directed by Gary Marshall.
Gary Marshall.
This,
by the way, what Gary Marshall actually sounds like. So just in my mind, he sounds like the super loud impression of Gary Marshall that Paul F. Tompkins does. This
is still one of his better movies, by the way. One thing I was going to say too, when you were talking about the thing at the beginning, where you were kind of uncomfortable because you knew what was about to happen to this person. The reason why I was sitting there thinking like, okay, well, I mean, I've seen the movie before many times, so I knew where it was going. But other than that, one thing that I was thinking about in the first part of this was how much worse the movie Swept Away is, which has a similar setup.
I've never seen that one.
Oh, God. That's the Madonna movie where it's the one that Guy Ritchie directed and she stars in, where she's playing a character very similar to...
Was it when their marriage started being on the rocks, or was it?
I think it was early into their marriage. This was like early 2000s. I think this was made, and it's a remake, and the original. I don't think I've seen the original, but one thing I know about the original is I think the original is actually supposed to be pretty good, but the remake that Guy Ritchie did with Madonna, like she starts out playing an extremely similar character to Goldie Hawn in this movie. And she and one of the servants on the boat like fall overboard and they end up on an island together. But because he knows how to survive and everything, it does this whole thing with sexual politics and everything on the... It's a movie that is trying to be a lot deeper than a movie like Overboard. It's trying to be more provocative than a movie like Overboard, but it just fails so hard. Kind of like what we were saying about Passengers earlier. But like it was so... In the opening parts of this movie, I was like, all right, this is still kind of working for me only because I'm remembering a much worse movie.
Just set the bar to the bottom rung on your
That's
mind. So this movie was intentionally, it sounds like, doing a send-up of the sexual dynamics of the movies of the 1940s.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have... Like, there's a way to do that while still commenting on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna make a reference that is probably gonna come back about me in the ass, because it's been a very, very long time since I've seen either of these movies. But did you ever see the original and the remake of Born Yesterday?
Oh God, a long time ago.
Because I feel like the John Goodman version, I feel like when I watched it, because I watched the original first and then I watched the remake, and I feel like the remake did a fairly good job of like kind of getting the same broad strokes as the original, while still kind of I feel bad saying humanizing a person, but humanizing the female character, the dumb bitch, and kind of giving her a little more agency in the role that she was in. And I don't feel like this movie really did that very much. And I think that doing an homage 40 years later, you gotta at least think about what you're homaging.
I don't
no matter
think
what time period it's in.
No, I agree with that, and a much smarter movie would have written it that way. This one I think is less it's less so much that it's trying to be a send up. I think it's just simply just trying to be one of those movies instead of commenting on it or anything like that. Did you like that one movie? What was it called? Down with Love? Is that what it was called? The one with,
I like that one because it's a musical, and I just like I'm a sucker for musicals. But too, like that one was so zany that you could tell what they were trying to do. It was like they were play acting their way through the movie. You know, you didn't believe that these people were characters. You believed they were putting on a play of the kind of movie that they were putting on a play of.
Yeah, they were straight up practically just reenacting a Rock Hudson Doris Day movie.
I am an astronaut.
Yeah, I like that movie. I like that movie a lot.
Even though the lines weren't calling it out, everything about them was calling it out.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that I saw that movie on an airplane, which seemed wildly appropriate for some reason. I dug that movie, but I feel, and I don't know, I could be proven wrong. I have the feeling that the remake of this movie is. Can you see the remake really doing anything clever with this plot?
Man, I hope so. Because, like, the fact that they put the effort forward to gender swap it seems like they're at least gonna try to make an effort, although it really shouldn't be better reversing the genders, because it's still one person deciding that if you're mean enough to me, I can just make you my slave for a couple months. And it's like you were saying, it's a light movie. It's like it's a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
And so I think, like Passengers, if you delve too deeply into the person realizing what a monster they've become in an effort to seek justice, it's not going to be a romantic comedy anymore.
No, but like Passengers was a movie trying to address that stuff but failing miserably at it. Unless you read the original script, in which it actually does a really good job at it. Like,
because it's originally a horror movie.
Yeah.
You know, and that movie tried and failed to make him try to come to terms with the horrible thing he was doing to this woman, and then still being like, but I want to get my dick wet, and you're super pretty.
But hey, life sucks, right? No, all I
Come on, man, my kids really like you. That to me is enough of a reason to just keep you in the dark and keep raping you through pretense. He
lo-
has sex with her in this movie, and it's like the grossest, creepiest, because they're playing that bullshitty 80s romance music over it, and they doink on the bed, and they doink on the floor, and they doink on the bed, and then the boys surprise her with a washing machine for her birthday.
Yeah.
And it's like, because this movie doesn't know. You know that this movie doesn't know how fucking gross that is. Like, every single step of that is gross.
Yeah, but I think the movie just wasn't thinking about that to begin with.
No.
I don't think, like...
I mean, like nowadays, sure, sometimes we overthink, sometimes I overthink stuff like this, but I think that's better than not thinking about it at all, like they did back then.
I totally agree with that. I think that an example of really overthinking something is when you see a tweet that says, Infinity War is racist because Black Panther shows up too late into the movie. Like, yeah, okay, dude. But... no, a movie like this, I don't think there's anything wrong with with critiquing this movie that way at all. Like, because, it certainly opens up a discussion about the movie. Like, what's weird about this movie now and why did it work in 1987? And there's even that, just even talking about how this movie worked back then. I mean, we were still laughing a handful of times in this film. We weren't sitting there through this whole movie just, throwing shit at the screen and all of that shit. Dave would have gotten mad. But,
Shut up, I'm trying to watch the movie!
I liked that as it went on, it seemed like people were crazier than Kurt Russell in this film. It reached a point in this movie when he was trying to tell her the truth. Your name's not Annie, it's Joanna. These aren't your kids. And
she wasn't even responding to that. It was just passing
sure.
around. This means nothing to me.
Sure, yeah, okay. But meanwhile, the kids are like, yeah, sorry, Dad, we want her to stay. And his friend Billy is like, yeah, sorry, Dean. I mean, you need her, man.
Yeah, but he was again, he was just as crazy, just in a quiet, insidious way, where he thought it was okay. There was a point in this movie where he's singing a happy song to himself, walking out to his truck.
Go to get me a slave!
How happy he is to have a slave. Perfect little slave, gonna go get drunk. It's this is the man that I, as the movie audience, am supposed to fall in love with and root for.
Yeah, it's Kurt Russell,
Die in a fire.
I had a great time watching this.
I enjoyed watching this only because now I can bitch about it with more, accuracy and
now
information.
You know. Exactly. Oh. When the movie was over, I said something like, oh man, I wish Laura was watching this with us too, and you're like, no, this is our movie to watch together. No, that's why Dave is outside right now.
This is the Brad Sarah friendship movie, and it's garbage and I hate it.
This is our movie. Is there anyone you'd recommend it to?
I kind of want to text my mom and see if she's seen it so that we can complain about it together, because I feel like she's probably going to have a lot of the same problems that I do with it.
What?
But she would have watched it in the 80s, though, so maybe she'd be able to put it into a little more perspective. I don't know, man.
What little I know about your mom, she would hate this movie.
I feel like that's probably the case. But she likes Goldie Hawn, though, so I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, Goldie Hawn is part of what makes this movie watchable. Goddamn, she is so good in this film.
You know what you should show Laura is Private Benjamin.
Oh, yeah, she would like that.
What was that one where Goldie Hawn was because that one I had some problems with too, but it was so funny. The one where she's in charge of a football team?
Wildcats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wildcats was pretty great. Death Becomes Her is awesome.
I didn't like that one the first time I watched it, but that was
that
back
movie.
in going to the video store and renting a VHS purely on the strength of its cover photo.
Oh, sure.
And so maybe it just wasn't the movie I was expecting to be.
She did do a movie that's kind of like this, but is a thriller. She did one psychological thriller in 90 or 91. It was called Deceived with her. It's actually not that bad of a movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but excuse me. The hair in my mouth. I have no idea where that came from, actually.
It's probably my dog.
Yeah, it's probably, I do kind of need to trim a little bit. But no, she did this movie called Deceived. She's married to John Hurd in the movie, but he fakes his own death, and then he turns out to be a psychopath and tries killing her.
He brains her with an iron.
They're there was like a climax in an elevator shaft. I actually remember that being pretty good. I was thinking about that when I was watching this. I'm like, oh, if you want the thriller version, watch Deceived. Also with Goldie Hawn, made not long after this movie. This movie, again, to go back to the remake a little bit, it seems like the remake is just going to be like, well, clearly the problem with the other one is that we need to gender swap it and it'll be fine. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's not...
All right. But again, I haven't seen it. Maybe they do some clever stuff with it, but like, I could...
It did seem like, at least in the remake, from what I could see from the trailer, she's doing her best to be civil to him, and then he wins
It did
the
look
shit
like
over
that.
the edge. Whereas in this movie, Goldie Hawn seemed to have a genuine fear he was gonna like lay hands on her.
Yeah.
Because he was like $600 and like advancing on her and like calling her names and like she's like, "Don't touch me."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm hard up, but I'm not that hard up." And then she just pushes him. And he happens to go overboard. And it's like, in that moment, I might have done the same thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I might not have thrown his tools over. Maybe I
No,
would have
you
thrown
keep
his
those
tools
and you sell
overboard.
them.
Yeah. Why would I sell them? I've got so many. I've got like a solid gold poodle. Yeah, that's the other thing. This movie turns out she's rich at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I forgot. So, there's like a thing that happens in this movie, and I had this sort of feeling of dread, like, are they gonna do this too, on top of everything else?
Uh-huh.
Because she's on the phone with her mother, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of chilling out and being rich. Oh, also my husband's told me that he wants children, I don't know what I should do, and her mom's like, don't do it, because then you won't be the baby anymore. And she's
Yeah.
like, and I'm like,
Okay.
she's gonna decide to have children with Kurt Russell by the end of this movie, isn't she? And then at the very, very end of the movie, he's like, well, if you're so rich, what can I give you that you don't already have? And I'm
Yeah.
like, a baby? And she's like,
Mhm.
a baby girl. And then they kiss, and that's the end. That's why her life was so hollow, is because she didn't,
clearly.
have any babies.
And she was... and Edward Herrmann was already married to Emily Gilmore. She was his mistress. Like, yeah, I mean... I could still recommend this movie for an audience that would enjoy a movie like this. There's an audience where a cheesy ass arc like that will still work. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying it's for me or anything like that, or that I'd recommend it to anyone on the face of the planet, but again, I get, from a writing standpoint, writing it back then when this movie was written for its audience, I get why they're doing certain beats that they're doing in this film. It's dated, but I get it. I get it. And for an audience that would still enjoy this in 1987, like, let's say my aunt hadn't seen this movie.
Uh-huh.
She has many times. She's got it on tape. Vicky.
Yeah.
I would still say to her, like, yeah, you would like that movie.
So you're asking if there's a new audience for this movie, so
No, I don't think
whether
there
it could
is.
withstand the test of time, or are you
No.
asking if there's someone in my life who's never seen
Oh,
this movie that
I
would...
get. Well, yeah, I guess. Like, I'm not asking if this movie stands the test of time or if it's like this timeless rom-com.
Uh-huh.
I just mean, would you recommend this to somebody who...
If I had someone that I was talking to that was already way into like 80s screwball comedies, and already like had the context to understand why there's problems inherent in the plot, that I could definitely recommend it to them. I don't know that I'd want this movie to stand the test of time. I don't know that I'd want like young people to be like, yeah, man, resurgence of...
That's not gonna happen.
Resurgence of these like... bullshit, toxically... I can't, I'm trying to put words to it, like, that. I don't want a new audience for movies like this.
No, I get that.
I wouldn't want, like, a young person to think that this is the way that you get a girl.
But I think
Not
that...
just the overboardy part, but, like, the grosser, more insidious way that he was treating her, even through to, like, the end of the movie, you know? He never even apologized to her. He just said, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. This is like a movie I would write for you and Dave as a joke. And you guys would sell the shit out of that,
do a
too.
fantastic job in this movie.
No, I know what you're saying. Like, I mean, I wouldn't... when this movie was popular back then, none of us were thinking like, well, clearly I need to go to the insane asylum right now and just pick up a girl.
But no, it's not the insane asylum part, and it's not like the zany plot. It's just the interactions.
Oh,
you
I
know?
got you. Yeah,
maybe
I get you.
maybe this rich bitch at my school, maybe I just need to be super mean to
Sure.
her, knock her down a couple pegs, neg her or whatever,
What? Oh, okay, I got you. I thought you said something else for a
What
second.
the hell is wrong with you?
You said it, not me.
The negging thing that guy with the top hat was doing, where it's like if a woman's got too high self-esteem to be with you, you just gotta knock her down a couple pegs and then she'll see you as more
You
of a
talking about an older
viable-
movie?
No, there's that mystery guy.
In this?
No, he was just like out in the world teaching men how to pick up young women.
Oh, this is a thing?
Yeah.
Oh God, no.
He was like
I don't-
called like the art of the pickup or something, and he had like this big fuzzy top hat. I'm gonna find you a picture of him when we're done doing the review. Because
Was he Tom Cruise in Magnolia?
He looked like desiccated Dave Navarro in like a fuzzy top hat, and his whole shtick was like, I'm gonna teach you how to pick up women. The trick is you go to them and you insult them to their faces.
Yeah.
But in like a charming way. And that will bump their self-esteem down a couple pegs, and then they'll be more apt to, accept your advances.
So this is like the whole like nice guy thing?
No.
Like, okay.
I mean, like, nice guys, but like the nice guys thing is a separate dynamic where like people are viewing like sex as transactional, where if you're having like if you got a thing for a woman, if you do enough nice things for her, she will eventually owe you sex, and if she doesn't give you sex, then she's a bitch, and it's because women don't like nice guys. Mystery had the whole other thing where it was like it was same in the sense that viewing sex as transactional, but more so trying to figure out the sort of like key code to make you have sex with me.
Okay.
And it's a lot of like, negging.
Yeah.
And then like just interacting with her in such a way that just bing, and then her legs just open up.
Whoa, man. That's a lot to take in.
We'll go inside and we'll Google fucking mystery, because I'm probably not describing the absurdity as well as I need to be.
This sounds, okay, like, I get... I think this guy took some movies a little too seriously.
You watched Overboard one too many times.
I just found
His
out.
formative years.
I just found out the other day what the nice guys thing was, which is why my mind immediately kind of went to that, because somebody on fucking Facebook, I put a shot of this over on Twitter too, sent me a couple of messages. One of them was like, "Hey Brad, how you doing?" I don't know who this is. Who writes back again and goes, "How's everything in the House of Snob?" or something. And then after like a minute was this like paragraph that's like, "Fuck you, why you never fucking talk to me? Piss off, you motherfucker."
Oh, like, you got nice guy.
I did, and I didn't know what that was, so I'm like, what the fuck? And like I put a still shot of it on Twitter, and like a bunch of people responded. A few people go like, "I've never seen someone platonically nice guy before." I was like, "What's that?" And I looked into that. I'm like, "Whoa, man!" And I'm like, "I got off pretty easy, actually." And Laura goes like, "Oh, I definitely know what that is. It's happened to me many times."
Yeah. It doesn't happen to me so much anymore now that I'm like married and have a kid.
Sure.
But like back in the day, and again, it's back to the thing. Back in the day, you didn't think much of it. You're like, "Oh, that poor guy," But no, not that poor guy. No one owes you sex.
I would never recommend this movie to like my wife. Or again, like I said earlier, like if my mom hadn't seen this or something, which she has many times, but if she hadn't, like I was saying about my aunt earlier, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, you'd like Overboard, like you'd have a good time with it." But I would never recommend this to a younger person, really, just because I would just assume they probably wouldn't like it.
I would hope that a younger person wouldn't like it. I mean, like I said, it's got some really funny parts. It's just, I think that's the most problematic thing, is that it sort of normalizes that dynamic.
I think it's important that a movie like this exists, though. Like, in the sense that, like, I could say the same thing about, like, something that from the 40s or 50s that for reasons maybe has aspects of it that don't hold up, whether we're talking about issues of sex or race. I think it's still important that movies like that exist, because it does show, like, a snapshot of what attitudes were like at the time and what rom-coms were like at the time, what audiences kind of thought about or didn't think about, or just certain attitudes and everything. So I do think it is still important that movies like this exist.
Yeah, I'm not saying like chuck it in a fire.
No, yeah, I know
Because,
that.
give yourself some context before you dive into it.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about like 16 Candles and like,
I still love 16 Candles.
I know you do, and I'm not faulting you for it. It's just there's some stuff that you gotta know what you're getting into before you like watch it as your benchmark for sexual relationships.
It's whenever movies like 16 Candles, Revenge of the Nerds, this movie get brought up today, it gets volatile really quickly, where you're either on one side or the other, and it's just kind of black and white. And I think that it is good to, there's nothing wrong with still enjoying a movie like this or a movie like the other ones that I mentioned. You can still, what I mean by that is, like, you can still enjoy those movies, especially if they're nostalgic for you, especially if it's something you grew up with, while still you can still address things about them that don't hold up or don't work, but still find things in there that you like. Like, you can't just be someone, and I see it all the time. I see it all the time when, even if you just bring up something about 16 Candles or Revenge of the Nerds, like, someone will yell at you or scream at you and say, oh, you're just being overly blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, motherfucker, you can still enjoy the fucking movie and talk about certain aspects of the movie.
Yeah. I think that's why I always enjoyed talking about Overboard with you, because even though you enjoy it, when I'm like, are you serious? That's the plot? That's so gross. You're like, yeah, it is.
It is.
It was a different time back then.
I don't know what I would think of this movie if this was my first time watching it. More or less, probably. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have any kind of nostalgia for the movie if I hadn't seen the movie before, but, like, if this was my first time seeing this movie, I probably would. There's still the same things I would have liked. I still would have liked the performances. Some of the lines I still would have liked just fine. Some of I could still see why it could have worked 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Did you know there was, like, a Korean TV series based on this?
No, I did not.
How does that fucking work?
I used to actually watch Korean soap operas with my mom. But,
Yeah.
Turkish soap operas? I used to watch Korean soap operas and Turkish
Yes.
soap operas because she was trying to teach herself foreign language, and it seemed like a good way to, like, kind of absorb the language.
Yeah.
I can't remember shit about the plot lines, but I remember them being kind of goofy.
Apparently there's an Overboard one.
I'm on board. Get it?
I do. Yes. Any final thoughts about this? Or is there anything else about the movie?
I'm trying to think, but I mean, it's just like, it is what it is, you know. I'm glad to have finally watched it, and I'm glad my assumptions proved correct. I would have felt terrible if I'd been bitching up a storm about it for the past decade, and it turned out to, you know, actually have like any sort of redemptive moment for any of these characters. Also, there's a jacket that Goldie Hawn's wearing in the very beginning of the movie where it's like a fully sequined naval dressing gown with gigantic golden epaulets, and I wanted so bad.
Yeah.
I'd wear it over my ridiculous 1980s swimsuit that's cut up to like here.
She looked stunning in this movie, man.
She looked really good. There was a point where one of the kids, a gross moment on top of many, many gross moments, where one of the kids goes like, she's got no tits, but she's got a great ass.
Ah, son, god damn it. You boys are gonna get it.
I mean, like, she had a fantastic figure, and it was a little different than, like, that sort of bouncy beach bunny figure you tended to see in the 1980s, and so I appreciated them kind of showcasing it instead of, like, trying to plump her up.
Oh, yeah, she was, like, Brigitte Nielsening the fuck out of her for her clothes in the opening act of this film. That's how you knew she wasn't evil by the end, when she's on the boat at the end.
She's letting her hair boof up.
Exactly, yeah. She doesn't slick it all the way back.
There was a party we had at the brew house one time, and this is always stuck in my craw, where it was like a 1980s themed party, and so I dressed kind of like I had the kind of like basically I kind of dressed like Goldie Hawn did in this movie,
Yeah.
where I had like the kind of hair boofed up in the back.
Yeah.
I think I was going for kind of a
You were doing the
what's her face in Blue Velvet.
or you were also doing like the Annie Bell from House on the Edge of the Park.
Yeah,
thing.
like I felt I was pulling it off, but everyone
Yeah.
else was wearing like Madonna shit, and they were like, "Sarah, what the hell are you wearing?"
Really?
80s, I'm 1980s.
You were rocking that shit, man.
Yeah, vindication.
I'm sure I just threw on like a white suit jacket. Probably.
Just wore 80s Dan.
Yeah. All right. Well, so what? Friday, we're probably gonna see the remake.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Hell yeah.
Bye, guys.
See it.